Hey there, guys. This is Mr. Herbst here, and today our focus is going to be on the circulatory system. Now, I want you guys to kind of use your root words there. Circulatory system, it's a circular system of the way the blood travels through your body. So it all kind of starts here, with your heart. And from there, it goes branches off into arteries, and then the arteries branch off into capillaries, which are very, very small, and then to veins, and then back to the heart. So it's a circular system of moving blood through our body. The most important part of our circulatory system, it wouldn't work without it, is the heart. The heart is composed almost entirely of muscle. The heart contracts or pumps roughly on average 72 times per minute. Now, of course, when you're exercising, it's going to pump faster or beat faster. But when you're sleeping, it's going to beat slower. However, on average, or if you were to average out your day, it's beating about 72 times per minute. And think about it, it's doing that per minute. Then think about that per hour, and then calculate that per day, per week, per month, per year, per lifetime. Man, your heart is working hard all of the time. A little bit more about the heart. The heart has 4 chambers. There are 2 upper chambers, which we call the atria. And then there are 2 lower chambers, which we call the ventricles. The atria are responsible for taking blood in, and the ventricles are responsible for pumping blood out of the heart. Over here in my diagram here is a picture of our heart ventricles. The right atrium here takes in blood from the body, from these 2 veins right here. If it's coming in from the veins, it's not going to be oxygenated. It goes in there, pumps it down to the ventricles, and then out to some lungs, where then it's going to come back in here to the left atrium. Remember, atriums receive the blood, then down to the left ventricle, and then it's going to go out to the rest of the body. Now, you may be looking at this and saying, well, Mr. Herbst here, you got your lefts from your rights mixed up here. Well, actually, I don't. The left atrium or the right atrium, I know it's reverse of what you might think, but actually, when you look at the heart here, we're looking at it as if it was in the person themselves. So all you got to do to sort of imagine this is turn yourself around. Think about on the left side of your heart would be the stuff that's pictured over here, the left atrium and the left ventricle pictured on the right. The left side stuff is over here, and the right side stuff is over here. So it's as if it was in the heart was in the person themselves. Now, we're going to move on to blood. You may know a little bit about blood. Chances are pretty good you might have even given blood at one time in your life. But not a lot of people actually know the blood is actually made up of many different things. Right in here, this really dark stuff is blood, complete blood cells. Now you may be looking at it, it's like, why is it like partly, yellow, partly red? Well, in that little test tube right there, imagine if you take some of your blood and spin it through a centrifuge. What's going to happen is your blood is going to separate into different parts or different things that your blood is made of. The first kind, or the heaviest part of your blood, is the blood cells themselves. So all this dark part right here is primarily just made up of only blood cells. And then right in here, this thin little layer that's in orange is made up of platelets and white blood cells. And then this part right here, which is yellow, is made up of blood plasma. Blood plasma actually makes up the majority of our blood. It's primarily made up of water and also dissolved proteins and dissolved sugars and dissolved nutrients that allow our cells to be supplied with nutrients. So a little bit more about blood. Like I just said, blood cells are the most numerous type of cell that we find in our blood. They help to transport oxygen. Obviously, our bodies need oxygen. We need oxygen to breathe. Red blood cells are responsible for doing that. They do that because of this compound right here called hemoglobin, which is a protein that contains iron. Now, what else has iron? Cars have iron. What happens when cars get old? They oxidize. They react with the oxygen in the air, and then they form, guess what? Rust. And what color is rust? Rust is red. Hemoglobin, which contains iron, when it binds to oxygen, it gives blood that red color. A little bit more about blood. Blood also has white blood cells, which are compared to red blood cells are not very common. There is not a whole lot of white blood cells in your blood, however, there are still present. White blood cells are very important in guarding against infection. They fight parasites and generally just give us our immune response. If you ever get sick or have the flu, it was those white blood cells that fought off the infection, the flu, or whatever it was that made you sick. And then finally, there are platelets found in blood. Platelets are not actually cells. They're chunks of old cells, basically, if I was to sum it up that way. But they are very important because they allow the blood to clot. Imagine over here this picture right in here. Let's imagine that a vesicle was cut. Imagine somebody cut themselves. Blood is going to start to seep out, and that's not good. If the blood just kept seeping out, eventually the person would lose all their blood and they would die. Chances are they probably wouldn't even live to see age 1 if that happened. But thank goodness we have platelets. Platelets help our blood to clot. Um, Platelets will react or form a reaction that will sort of form this mesh or this net, and then it will stop the blood from leaking out and will allow our bodies to heal and allow those cells to go through mitosis and form those nice healing wounds. So platelets are responsible for allowing our blood to clot. Now I'm going to switch gears here and focus on blood vessels. Blood vessels or a vessel is anything that blood moves through. So you probably at one time in your life heard of these things called arteries. Keep your arteries clean. Make sure you eat lots of fish. Don't let plaque build up in your arteries. There's all these commercials, whatnot. Arteries are any sort of vesicle that carries blood from the heart to away from the heart to the body. So generally, arteries are usually loaded with oxygen, because they just came from the heart. They just got oxygenized from the lungs. The aorta is the largest artery in your body. Now, right over here in my picture, this here is the heart. And right up in here, that is the aorta. That's the largest artery right in there. Coming off of the aorta is one artery that goes to your left arm, one artery that goes to your head, and another artery that goes to your right arm. And then coming off the back of it is the thoracic artery, which goes down, which goes with your spine, goes down your spinal area, and it has these little branching areas that give blood to your organs such as your stomach, your liver, your kidneys, and whatnot. And then it also branches and gives blood to each leg. So what's very important to understand about arteries is that they keep branching off and branching off and branching off until eventually they get to the cellular level. They get to these branches that are very, very small, called capillaries. Capillaries are the smallest vessels in our body. They're very, very, very thin, only 1 cell thin. They're microscopic. You can't see them. But if you ever were to cut yourself, you're cutting through capillaries. If you were to cut an artery, that artery would make the blood gush out. And if you were to cut a vein, the vein would make the blood seep out. But, when you cut capillaries, it's just sort of like, oh, I cut myself, no big deal. Capillaries are where actually the blood exchanges its oxygen and other nutrients with the cells around them. So if we were to look at this diagram right here, the arteries are coming in right here with oxygen-rich blood, and they're going to supply the cells around the capillaries with all of the nutrients they need, other than oxygen, of course, glucose and and all the and salts and on all the things that the cells need. So they're going to give off the oxygen and the nutrients. In the process of giving off the oxygen, the blood is going to change from red to blue, and that is the point at which we call a vein. Once it changes from red to blue, we call it a vein. Veins are responsible for bringing blood back to the heart so that it can go back to the lungs and get oxygenated again, become red again, and then continue the cycle all over. So, the most important thing to understand about veins is that they are poor in oxygen. And then also, another very important thing to understand about veins is that they contain valves that allow the blood to work against the force of gravity. Now imagine, this right up here would be the head or the upper part of a person, and right here would be the lower part of a person. Now, the force of gravity is always tugging down on blood. So why doesn't our blood pool up in our feet? That would be bad if that happened. Our blood doesn't do that. However, as the blood moves through the veins, it moves through these valves that allow blood to move only one way. So the blood can go through them, but it doesn't allow them to go back down. And that's very important because if the blood did go back down, it would pool up in our legs when we were standing up. But because it could only go one way, it allows for that continuous flow of blood. Anyway, here, guys, that concludes the circulatory system. Make sure you complete the Google form below. This is Mr. Herbst, and I'm signing off, folks. You all have a nice day.